Okay, welcome to our EYSA Soccer Parent Clinic. We're here to go through a number of topics, and these topics are ones that, for the most part, are brought to us directly from you, the parents and the coaches. We receive them from our registrars, primarily from the five, or I should say six EYSA clubs. We've heard from coaches, we've heard from referees, and these are the things, these are the topics that keep coming up over and over that are either very relevant to just this year, but a lot of them are relevant for many years. So we're going to go through these, and hopefully you'll find the content helpful and interesting. Here's our agenda. We're going to go over player pathways. Well, you can read it. I'm not going to bore you with your reading skills. We'll leave time at the end for Q&A, and if time allows, we'll get to those last two bullets.
So this is the player pathway, and just for your own information, it goes from the very lowest and youngest levels to the very top. We'll try to focus on what's most important for you guys and where kind of EYSA sits. So at the very youngest levels, there's micro, and it's U6 and U7. And then above that, you have Junior Academy, which would be an EYSA FC offering. It's similar to the mod teams at U8, U11, but this is with the paid EYSA FC coach. And then there's recreational and select. Select starts at U10 today, and it goes up until U18. Recreational at this level, I mean, it's up to down here is recreational 12, but this tier is U12 to U18. And then above that, we have a U9 to U18 offering that's Premier. That's primarily EYSA FC, although there's some Premier teams at the local level as well. Mostly on Mercy Island. Bellevue also has some RCL teams. Above that, I'll just go through this really quickly. If your child is doing, unbelievably well at the Premier level, they can try out for the Elite Player Development Program. And for those that have played soccer their whole lives, that used to be called ODP, which is Olympic Developmental Pools. And those plug into the regional and then the national team. So the team that just made the World Cup is coming on these sorts of programs as well. Kind of next to that would be EPD State. That's just the state pool I was just referring to. And then you have Development Academy now at actually U13 starting next year, I believe. And that's Eastside FC, Crossfire, and the Eastside Club works with the Sounders as an affiliate club. So there's about 5 or 6 of them that plug into the actual Sounders Academy. And above that, you basically have college and professional careers at the very top. So this is kind of where EYSA sits. We offer all of this within our association. And if you don't know, we have Lake Hills, we have Bellevue, we have Newport, Mercer Island, Issaquah, and then Eastside FC. So again, this is just a snapshot of the same table over here with all the different levels we have.
Okay, so we polled the audience and came up with one major new rule and one major old rule that parents always seem to be asking about, confused about, wondering why is it there, how does it work? So the new rule is what we call the no poaching, or sometimes referred to as the build-out lines rule. So the genesis of this is, and I've been coaching since my kids were this small. And back in those days, this build-out rule didn't exist. So what would happen is invariably when the kids are 6, 7 years old, and they go back to take the goal kick, and they'd run up, and they'd do their darndest to get that ball up off the ground and outside of the penalty area. But 9 times out of 10, unless the coach figured out who that really big kicker was at that young age group, the ball would barely trickle out of the penalty area. And the smart coaches would tell their offensive players to line the edges of the penalty area, wait for that ball to just trickle out, grab the ball, and then dribble and kick it back in the goal. So it was really kind of unfair from a defensive perspective. But what was even more unfair is that as the kids got older and more of them learned how to kick the ball farther, they would do just that. They would boot the ball to save their lives. We got to get it out of the goal. And what fails then at that point is a valuable skill set, which in some ways, if you look at the Sounders play, for example, is still lacking even in the pro ranks. And that's this notion of being able to build the play slowly out of the back. Careful possession, passing play, where you can maintain possession, work the ball up the field, and keep possession. Because if you just kick it far as a goal kick, who knows who's going to come down to the ball? It could be your team, it could be the other team. So the notion is here, we restrict the marking of the boxes, the penalty area, on the goal kicks. And we require, through this rule, starting at UA, that kids have to go all the way back to the midfield line before they can advance on that goal kick. And the timing of when they can advance on that goal kick, not only does the goal kick have to take place and clear the penalty area, but it has to be received successfully by somebody on that defensive team. So what we've given the kid a chance to do, or the kids a chance to do, is kick it, but not boot it, kick it, almost make a pass out of that goal area, receive it, turn, look, think, who am I going to pass it to, and hopefully execute a successful pass to somebody else on the play on their team, and begin to do that process of working it out. We reduce the number of goals, and this notion of escalated player development, meaningful player touches, and most importantly, decision making, so they can think of, okay, I've got the ball at my feet. Yes, there's players coming at me from the other team from the midfield, but who am I going to pass it to? Who's open? Where are their passing lines, etc.? This is what's going on. We actually here at EYSA implemented the rule long before it was mandated by US Soccer, and it's something we've continued to do to this day as other clubs are then now mandating it. There's different implementations. Some clubs and some age groups require you to go all the way to the midfield. Some have lines about halfway between the penalty area and the midfield. The concept is there, and it's really working. So that's what it's all about. It's there for a reason, and it's working quite well. The other rule, as you may have guessed or anticipated, is this dreaded offside rule. It's always been there. It's changed a little bit over the years. It's hard to understand. It's hard to officiate in some cases. As well as a coach, I'm also a referee. And every year when we get our retraining for referees, it's one of the areas that we spend the most time on discussing, analyzing, looking at videotapes of the pros of college games. And okay, is that offside or is it not offside? How can you tell? So from a beginner or even advanced perspective, what is offside? So first thing to understand, there's a difference between being in an offside position and being offside. Anybody can be in an offside position, and that's not illegal. You can stand in all different places and be in an offside position, but that doesn't mean that the AR is going to raise their flag. It doesn't mean the ref is going to blow the whistle. If you're offside and you get whistled, that's because not only are you in that offside position, but you're also being involved in play in some way, shape, or form, or distracting the goalie, or receiving the ball in an illegal manner. That's when the offside takes place. So how do you become offside? How do you get in an offside position? Any part of your body, except your arms, has to be in that offside position. So it can be just your head, it can be your foot, it can be your rear end, whatever it means. You have to be in offside position, which means that you're closer to the goal than the second to last defender. One of those defenders is the goalie, and then one other defender. That's what makes you in an offside position. You can't be offside, or you can't be in an offside position if it's a throw-in, a corner kick, if you're on your side of the field, or if you have at least two players. So you'll see the good strikers, the good forwards, always sort of be looking, let me look around both sides of me, make sure there's at least one player, plus assuming the goalie, and that's how they sort of time themselves to look around to make sure they're not offside. The tricky part, though, is in addition to everything else you have to remember as a ref or as a player, that if a ball comes in and it gets knocked off the goalpost, off the goalie, and then back into somebody who's in an offside position, because then they become they become ready to play the ball, that's still an offside call. So sometimes you think, well, that can't be offside because it hit the goalpost or hit the goalie. Still, that's technically an offside position, and that's an offside whistle. There's a couple other areas that are slightly misunderstood. Advantage, slide tackles, shoulder tackles, and heading. Advantage is when you're on the field and you see your son or your daughter go down in a tumble, which is a clear foul from them getting kicked, nudged, pushed, etc. And they fall, and you're yelling, "Ref, that's a foul!" And the ref doesn't call a thing. He or she doesn't blow their whistle. All you see him doing this. What this means is the ref is trying to help. Believe it or not, the ref is trying to help your son or your daughter by allowing play to go on, because in spite of your fact your son or your daughter got fouled, one of their teammates ended up with the ball and is proceeding downfield heading towards the goal to score. And so the notion is you don't want the ref to blow a foul, because that would cut off the advantage that your team has by going towards the goal. If the ref sees that after a brief period of time that advantage doesn't materialize because the ball is tackled away or is lost, he or she will blow their whistle, bring the ball back, actually call a foul, and it'll be a direct or indirect free kick from that point. But as long as they can, they're going to give your team that advantage. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes they'll give it the advantage. A period longer than normal will go by, and then your team will lose the ball. And then obviously at that point they can't bring it back, but that's sort of the risk and reward of the advantage call. Slide tackles, we don't allow them at the younger age groups. As the kids get older, yes, we allow them, but still they've got to be clean. They can't from behind, they can't have steads up. They've got to not just get the ball, but get it in a clean, safe manner. So you'll see refs, particularly at the younger ages, be very careful and very almost overly diligent the way they blow the whistle for slide tackles. Shoulder tackles is one that's often misunderstood, that we actually encourage clean shoulder-to-shoulder tackles, charging, if you will, but charging in an aggressive but legal manner, as long as the arms don't come out from the body, as long as they're not pulling and shoving and tearing in the hair, body, jersey, then it's okay. That's clean. That's what you want. Soccer is meant to be an aggressive game. It's just not meant to be an illegal game. So we encourage those shoulder-to-shoulder tackles within reason. And finally, heading, as a result of many different medical studies, the U.S. youth soccer in general is working to decrease heading, so you can't start heading either in practice or in games until you're 11 or older. And even then, it's something we try to be careful with in terms of watching what concussion effects might result from not just usually not the actual heading the ball, but two people going and heading the ball at the same time and end up knocking heads. Then we have to deal with it as well. But the heading thing, it used to be we practice it all the time. Even the younger ages now, we're done. It's something we were really careful with.
Just by a show of hands, because I can't have you ask questions yet, who thinks soccer is an athletic sport? It is the wrong side. Anyways, we'll get to this. I'm going to be discussing periodization later and some of the principles around that. It's going to be new to you guys. This is actually from our coaching blueprint. And our coaching blueprints, it's always a work in progress. It's organic, it's alive, it's evolving. But basically, it's a system, if you will, or a philosophy that encourages players to use their brains and make decisions, and do so in a manner that all the players learn the same way, as opposed to, you know, Jimmy and Paul and Yoshiko learning from three different coaches, totally different concepts. So this is an example from the blueprint. As I said, it's all about developing clever players that are technically superior or technically able, if you will. But that happens by them making their own decisions, not a coach telling them the answers all the time. But one of the important things about this is, and within a club, maybe it's any of your clubs, we'd rather have this be association-wide, but it's quite difficult. is just systems of play. This is a small part of it, but you can see here in 3-a-side, there's a triangle. In 4-a-side, there's 2 triangles or a diamond. In 5-a-side, there should be lots of different ways to make lots of different triangles, plus the goalie. But the goalie should also be playing in the field, so these angles should exist in this red. I don't know if you can see it. But the angles should be existent with the goalie. So the goalie should actually be playing like a sweeper keeper, or playing in the field and distributing the ball around the back. And then those same angles and triangles and shapes move to 6-a-side and 9-a-side. We actually have 7-a-side as well, and then to 11-a-side. So you'll see the same formation. This would be called a 1-2, 1-2 maybe. But those same patterns go up as you go up in ages. So that just helps define the roles. What is your outside winger's position? What are the roles of that position? What is your center mid or your pivot player? Who's providing depth up top, like your striker, what kind of runs the striker makes? So it would be beneficial for the kids, these young players here, to not be told differently at every level they go up to, including up to the Sounders. This is an example of another benefit of the blueprint. Every week our young coaches get either a session plan from the Sounders, or they get one at the older ages from the association. Every week they're a similar topic. This week looks like it's 1v1 attacking, and this one is attacking. So it's not like you're doing in a session, you're not going to do attacking and finishing and defending and heading and things like this. You want to have the session and the whole cycle, if you will, be on one topic or one related topic, so that it's the kids can learn in a clearer fashion. Okay, paid coach versus trainer versus parent coach. Scott put in good, better, best. I'll just go through them and you guys can see what you think is good, better, and best. But most of our association actually has parent coaches. And these are, you might have to run 1 or 2 practices a week and then one game usually. It's great for the community to have, you guys are all seem like you're dedicated because you're here, but it's really good for the community to be around a role model, around a whole bunch of kids. The coaches that really step up and offer their time and their energy and their support, you'll see some of those coaches stay with that age group from U6 all the way up. And there's just a lot of community benefits from that. Now sometimes the players that are excelling, scoring 100 goals a game, you want to probably push those kids to a different team, different coach, different level. But these sorts of people in our community are required for the sport. And we'll go through the player pathway later, so remember that. We have lots of resources that make your job a lot easier if you guys are interested in coaching. You get a weekly session plan. We pay for your licenses. We offer free clinics. The Sounders do an annual clinic for just EYSA. So lots of stuff to make your job super easy. And then the best part about it is recreational soccer is the most inexpensive way to play. And our country is the most expensive country in the world to play soccer. So our recreational level is the cheapest by far. This is usually a select level. Some of you guys play select, but at the select level, we oftentimes have a parent coach coaching the games and then a trainer coaching the actual practices. So the cost goes up a little bit because we usually have to pay the trainer to do the practice. And then lastly, at the premier level, and actually at a lot of select levels now, there's a full-time coach. Problem is the prices go way up. I mean, usually above $2,000 a player. And then it's also hard to find, a coach that you would like to spend that kind of money on typically. And back to the pathway. So, if you look at this pathway, we went over it before some of you guys walked in, but 90% of the country play in this level, okay? 80% of the country play in this level. So just 15% even play at the elite level. So that means we need to invest where the masses are. We need to help folks like you guys and coaches that are coaching the young ages and the recreational ages. Because if we bring those levels up, so players are learning the right things and developing in the right way, the whole pyramid comes up, so we won't miss any more World Cups. So the World Cup issue isn't a problem, but it is a problem with the big player pool, but it's also a problem with how these players are developed. So investing here is going to produce a lot more. For example, are you guys familiar with Catalonia? That's where Barcelona sits. They're, roughly the size of maybe Washington State, yet they have, players and players coming out every neighborhood of the city, virtually.
Okay, so again, we polled the audience and found a couple areas around referees and around registration processes that there seem to be a lot of questions or uncertainties around. Let's start with refs. And these are things, actually all of these that come up year after year after year. They always come up. First one, and this one particularly emerges at the beginning of the season, is earrings. A girl or a boy may have just gotten their ears pierced in preparation for the school year, and the first game comes up, and the referee, as they should, go around and say, okay, you need to remove all jewelry, including earrings. And that particular girl says, well, I just got them put in, and my doctor, my earring person said, I can't take them out or else my ears will close up, the holes will close up. And there usually ensues many tears, many issues, coaches, parents getting upset and angry. But not only do you have to take them out, you can't just, some people say, well, if I put tape over them or a Band-Aid or something. No, that doesn't work either. This is not just EYSA, the soccer community, being persnickety about the rule. If you look online, and I don't encourage you to, but you need to have a solid stomach and look at some pictures of people who have played with earrings and got it caught on a player's fingernail inadvertently, or a piece of clothing, and had that earring get ripped out and parts of the ear along with it. It's a dangerous, messy thing. So we do it for a reason, and we do the same thing for watches and jewelry, etc. It's for the player safety. So this is something that referees will be extremely dogmatic about enforcing. And as parents, your job, my ask of all of you, is to not put up a fight, go along with it. If you see one of your fellow parents putting up that fight, step in if it feels right and let them know what's going on, that there is a reason for this. Earrings is number one. Existence is number two. You parents are probably neck and neck with coaches for being the number one reason why we have such a hard time getting referees. Parents sit on the sidelines, are angry, or enthusiastic, I guess is the positive way to put it, but their enthusiasm often goes a little bit awry, and the recipient of that unstructured enthusiasm is usually the youth referee who's out there trying their best to make a little money on the side, but also make sure this game can be played. And oftentimes those frustrations spill over to the ref. The ref ends up cutting their season short, and then all of a sudden we don't have that ref the next year. And not only that, we don't have the ref telling her friends, oh, you should go ref, it's great, you can earn some money, because they say you had such a bad experience. So again, my ask of you as parents, maintain your composure. The ref, in fact, think of that ref as if he or she is your daughter or son, because they might be your daughter or son. And what would you do, what would you say, how would you behave if that was your son out there in the field? Which brings me to the next point, which I mentioned to and alluded to earlier. Wow, what a great way to make some extra money. So if you are a young teenager who is not driving yet, but wants to earn some money, you're probably going to earn a lot better money refereeing soccer games than you are doing odd jobs around the house, and you're certainly not old enough to work at McDonald's or someplace else. Not only can you earn a lot of money as a kid refereeing these games, but for all you parents out there who are sitting there being your sideline referee or sideline coach thinking, gosh, I can do a better job than that ref out there. Well, here's your opportunity. We need parent refs especially to go out there, and being a referee doesn't mean that you have to be the center ref making all the tough calls and blowing your whistle. You can be an easily assistant referee. You get to wave a pretty flag around, run up and down the sidelines. We need those referees too. It's great exercise. It's a good way to get to know the game better, understand all these fun rules like offside. And we need you too. We need you for the older games. We need you for all the tournaments that are constantly being scheduled, unfortunately, and you'll hear more about that from Aaron later. But, and you as parents can earn upwards of $50 a game. Ref a couple games, you have enough money to go out to dinner with your husband or wife and enjoy yourself. So there's a good payoff in addition to the exercise. And obviously in addition to helping out this game and your kids. Finally, there's this thing called RIP. It's not rest in peace, it's ref in pool. And this is a mechanism, a process we have to try to get more of the adult refs 16 or older. The way it works is every team who's a U13 rec team or any level of select or premier team is responsible for nominating some referee who's 16 years or older into this RIP, this ref in pool. That nominated person can be an uncle, aunt, neighbor, relative, who knows, it doesn't matter as long as there's somebody who's willing to go out and ref at least 10 games over the course of the season. In exchange for doing this, you guarantee your team the ability to have a tiny little star next to every game that your team plays in the season. So that means that there's a much higher level of guarantee that your team is going to receive a full complement of refs, 2 ARs plus a center, and get your team staffed first with referees. Because we have such a dwindling set of referees, the staffing of the ref and pool program allows then you to make sure that your team is guaranteed those, or nearly guaranteed those refs when you need them. That's the ref issues we hear. Went too fast. There we go. Let's go back to registration policies. So this is one that is confusing, or we get a lot of questions about, and we particularly have received a lot of questions about this in the last year. The first one is this thing of birth year rules, which requires a proof of birth to make sure that we're actually getting kids that are going in the right age group. Well, let me take you back 15, 20 years when my kids first started playing. And just after, or just before, I can't remember any longer, they started playing, the rule was, that the way things were done, was it was based on birth year. That's the way you registered a kid. If they were born in 1996, which my oldest kid was, that would determine what team they went on. And then just after they'd started that, they decided, the U.S. decided, hey, you know what, this isn't working. We're going to go to school year. So they changed it over to school year. And boy, was there just this huge hue and cry. Everybody's going, this is terrible. I don't understand it. It's wrong. I would have to change. And everybody was lamenting the fact that it went to school year. A couple years went by. That became the norm. Everybody said, this is the way it's done. It's great. It's based on school year. So guess what happened last year? Well, they changed it again. They changed it back to birth year. And when I say they, it wasn't EYSA, it wasn't Washington State, it was U.S. Soccer. And they did it for a couple different reasons. They did it because, lo and behold, that's the way the rest of the world does it. So we were really trying to align U.S. Soccer with the way it's played and the way the age groups are determined all over the world. The concept that makes it easier to understand, it makes it more liable that we're going to not allow either inadvertently or inadvertently kids to register themselves for multiple teams, multiple age groups in a weird sort of way. The other thing is this notion of RAE, which stands for relative age effect. So the notion here is we want to make sure that kids who look older aren't prioritized in terms of team selection because of their size and their relative maturity, but it's based purely on an unbiased age selection process, which we can do with the birth year. So net message here, short-term confusion, long-term gain, hopefully, and for those of you who went through this process with us starting last year and obviously continued this year, last year we had what I call the registration chaos period, where we purposefully said, hey, you know what, we want to keep these kids who have already formed teams to play together. So we basically took off all of our restrictions around playoffs, playdowns, and said, we want to keep the teams together, so we're not going to mandate the specific age. We're just going to allow the teams to either all go up or all play down together. And then this year we went back to normal. to standardize it. But we did our best within the rules that we were provided with from U.S. Soccer to normalize it from a starting standpoint. And now, of course, all the new teams that get formed are formed based on birth years. We have other key criteria for team selection in terms of how we do this in an unbiased way so that teams aren't loaded up. We do it based on first come, first serve in the registration process. We have very specific rules about playoffs in terms of not letting kids who are younger play again up to older age groups. There are policies the way that works, particularly in select, so that kids who are truly gifted or playing above their years do have the opportunity to play at a more aggressive age level, but even there's restrictions because we want to make sure that there's not a situation where a ton of kids are playing up an age group, and by doing that, disadvantaging the kids who are actually those ages and not allowing them to find a spot on a team. So there are certain restrictions for that, and certainly with play downs, if there's kids who have health or size issues that really make it unsafe for them to play at their actual age group, we have a petition process that allows, with doctors' notation, a kid to come in, and they have to do this every year. They have to provide that doctor's note that says, hey, Jimmy is, I don't know, maybe asthmatic or has had some sort of developmental issues that really it's safer for them to play down an age group so they can still play and have fun, but so they're not overwhelmed by the kids his or her age. And obviously we want to monitor that carefully because we don't want somebody who's, a huge hulking person or kid, I should say, playing down with younger kids and potentially endangering the health and safety of those younger kids they're playing with. So it's something we always do a balancing act with. Finally, roster size limits. We always get the question, okay, can we just have one more kid on my team so that Susie can play with her friend Sally? Well, in general, the answer to that is no, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is, if every team took one extra player, all of those one extra players across that age group for that gender could be enough to form yet another team, and we could get more kids playing the game. Because that's what we want to do. We want to get as many kids playing soccer as possible. The second piece is that if we have too many kids at any given age group, then going back to what I was talking about earlier with the build-out lines and the no coaching rule, we really want to get kids touching the ball, playing the ball. And the more kids that are on a roster means the less kids who are going to see game time and have the opportunity to learn this game. So we really are trying to be deliberate around the roster limits to make sure that this works right. It's funny though, the flip side happens occasionally too. The older groups, I still remember a coach who was coaching a U18 team, the seniors in high school, and the roster size limit for that is 18. Yes, we had 18 people that we needed to put on his team. And he called me up at the beginning of the season and said, Scott, gosh, 18 players, how am I ever going to get these kids to see time on the field? This just is a non-starter. I'm really upset. And I said, listen, that's the roster size. We need to put them on there. Trust me, you're gonna want these extra players. Well, at the end of the season, I ran into him at the end of the year coaches meeting. He said, Scott, thanks. First of all, I apologize for being a bit aggressive. Thanks so much for letting me have all those 18 players because I had kids on college visits, I had kids sick, I had kids on dates, I had kids zoning out and missing games, and I needed every single one of those 18 players to fill my team and make sure I had at least 11 players for every given game of the season. So you may think as a coach or as a parent that there's issues with the way we do things, and we're not perfect, but there is a method to our madness.
So show me again who thinks soccer is a athletic sport. Okay, good. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, the blueprint is to develop their decision-making, making them a clever player, and also making them technically able players. So that's done through multiple decisions and done through multiple touches. So everything should be based on that. So here we have, you guys should recognize this guy, right? Anybody know? That's J.J. Watt, the Texans guy. And this is, you guys surely recognize the little one, huh? That's Messi. And this is Aguero. I think he's about a half an inch taller than Messi anyway. They're both, about my size, really. So soccer is not an athletic sport, or the U.S. would be winning all the World Cups, okay? Excuse me. I mean, we have the best athletes in the world pretty much by far. I mean, we have the NFL. We had all the NFL players playing soccer, right? So, not really. Okay, so in soccer, there's it's 11v11. Thousands of decisions are happening every game, okay? Decisions when the players are using their brain or fatiguing their bodies as much as the running part, okay? It's like when you're sitting in your cubicle working, you become fatigued, okay? So you're actually building up, your capacity to make decisions. So we say it's predominantly a brain sport, so it's a thinking sport, it's a decision-making sport. And we measure soccer with actions. So an action is a dribble, a tackle, a pass, a run, a press, a block, a shot. But every time you decide to do one of those things, it's predicated on the surroundings, the communication, where the ball is, where the teammates are, what you decide to do. If the ball is rolling to you, you're going to decide to trap it, or you're going to decide to dribble, shoot, pass. So there's lots of different variables that don't happen in other sports. In baseball, the coach is giving all these signals. Hey, let's steal the base. Football, they're calling in the plays. So they're all robots. They're kind of, dictators, if you will. In soccer, it's purely players. A coach can scream all they want, but there's no way they're going to change the decision if the ball is traveling to Scott. And what he's going to do, the coach is never going to be able to communicate to him that quickly. Okay? So it's not a 40-yard dash or bench press. Working on a 40-yard dash or working on your bench pressing is not going to make you a good soccer player. Nor is being 6'5", 500 pounds, whatever it is. So as I said, we measure with soccer actions. When you measure it, a bigger X is the quality, okay? So if it's a really good pass, if this young man makes a really good dribble, when we measure the action, it's a huge X, okay? If he's tired later in the game and the player is, very sloppy, loses the ball or tries to trap it and it's not so tight, then it'd be a little low quality X, so a smaller X. And then the hyphens are the frequency of the action. So as you're building up, and I forgot to tell you this is about periodization, but periodization is just a plan to how you coach and how you deliver the sport. The hyphens are basically how frequent the actions occur. So, in a professional league, you want, hundreds of actions per game. In a youth game, it's still probably, in the tens of, maybe 50 to 80, for a U8 game. And then as you go up and up, the actions become more frequent. But you want them to be high quality actions. And that's how you develop good players. So, before the action is even executed, the player has to take his communication inputs, okay? Non-verbal is probably most important because you have to know where the ball is, where the teammates are, who's pressing, who's open, who's making runs. And then the verbal part is typically what the coach is doing. And, youth sports, what they're screaming, I guess. And then what the teammates are saying, okay? Then the whole action becomes this. The soccer action is the communication, the decision, and then the execution of the decision. So all that is a soccer action, okay? So if a young player has to do 100 of those a game, it's very tiring, okay? So I'm saying this because I'm going to lead you up to where it goes if you overuse this player or have them play multiple games in a weekend. So what is a good and bad action? I mean, it varies. A shot on goal might be a good shot on goal in one perspective, and the next game, the very same scenario with a different pressing defender, maybe the pass was the right decision. So you can't always just say, oh, that kid is making a bad shot. It depends. So periodization, and we'll jump through this. This is very high level, but we're trying to educate parents on this because there's an epidemic of injuries in this country. And it's off the charts compared to anywhere else in the world. And everybody says, oh, we should do FIFA 11 warm-ups, or, oh, we should, get the kids stronger. Let's put that 10-year-old in the gym and build up her muscles around her knee so her knee can really not rip, tear her ACL when she's 12, But girls and boys as young as 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, ACLs, hamstrings, soft tissue, it's all the same. So it's really coming down to fatigue and overuse, okay? So how you would build this up and prevent it is very simple, actually. It's just rest and recovery, okay? So periodization is basically making periods in your plan. Here's the build-up cycle, and here's the recovery. Here you're building up, there's the recovery, okay? So the recovery is actually the most important thing. So if Charlie is playing 2 games in a weekend, there's no recovery. So there's no super compensation happening with the muscles. So there's no point in playing 2 games, is what I'm trying to say. It's useless. It's not building up fitness, it's not doing anything. So periodization can be a number of different things, and these are cycles which maybe some of the coaches can come to a course later, and just how we break it up. Fitness periodization is part of it, and then tactical is how we teach, okay? When we're trying to teach small children, we want to start in the back, because that's the most difficult place for them to gain confidence, and they need skills to be able to receive and pass and dribble right in front of the goal, where the parents are screaming to get it out. We don't want them to kick the ball. We want them to be comfortable in the back, right by the goalie, and pass the ball and be creative and do whatever they want, make mistakes, give up 5 goals. But after a couple of years of that, guess what? The kids are looking like Messi back there in front of their goalie, you know what I mean? So you have to do that. You have to invest. That's where you invest your kids. So super compensation. As I mentioned with the player Charlie, if you're playing 2, 3, 4 games in a weekend, guess what? This doesn't happen. The super compensation cannot happen. You want to damage the muscles to a point where they're uncomfortable. And when I say muscles, I'm talking brain, leg muscle, heart. You want to get them uncomfortable so they're damaged a little bit, and then let the body heal them. And then when the body has healed that particular organ, there's going to be a stronger level above, so you're building a little platform. The more you damage and heal, the better the fitness level or the health becomes with that particular organ. Is this clear? Okay. So, leads us to the number 1 problem in the entire country right now, is tournaments. So we did a study 3 years ago, and basically went out and measured players, their actions per game. So game 1, obviously, it's usually the very highest. Okay, so let's take 150 for example. Game 1, Charlie goes out, plays 7 p.m. on a Friday night. They win. He has 150 actions, and if you remember, actions are everything, Quantity was 150. Game 2, actually, if you remember, let's see the small x, so not very many small x's here, and 150 actions. Game 2, 130 actions, more small x's, so the quality went down, and the quantity went down. Game 3, even more small x's, and 125 actions, so the quality and the quantity went down once again. So what is happening? The quantity is going down, the quality is going down, and then the scary thing is your brain actually develops habits. So habits are just patterns of behavior. So when your body is damaged and you're in a physical activity, your body's going to start telling, or your brain's going to start telling the body to slow down. Now let's hold on, you're pushing us too hard. Okay, that's what the brain is saying to the body. So that becomes a behavior, it's a habit loop, for those of you familiar with that. The worst thing that's happening here is the kids and the players are fatigued. So guess what happens when players are fatigued? The brain is slowing the body down, and the motor system is now slow. So the brain says, hey, get ready, we're getting ready to turn to get the ball, and the messaging is delayed. So the brain says turn, the body hasn't made it yet, and guess what? The ACL, adios. It's that simple. So delayed messaging, bye-bye ACL. So this is the problem, uneducated coaches are training between 2 tournaments. If you're doing a tournament one weekend, training in the middle, and tournament the next weekend, that's happening frequently at many different levels. I mean, I don't know about recreational, but definitely selected premier levels, college for sure, is you're not letting the body supercompensate and recover. So what is not happening? Supercompensation. Long-term fitness doesn't happen because you can't develop your fitness without supercompensation. Recovery doesn't happen. You're not getting rid of the fatigue. And the communication doesn't happen. What you want to improve in soccer is the communication between the players. You know, the players need to know how they like to receive the ball, where they're running. If they're running a 4-3-3, who's responsible for the width, who has support, who has depth. Does the goalie like to receive the ball in the air, or can he play with his feet? So what happens in tournaments is 85% of the tournaments last summer, teams use guest players. Because the tournament season's in the summer, so kids are on vacation, it's too hot, they don't go. So you're using guest players so the communication is not enhanced. So the recommendation, I would say, you know, don't do so many tournaments if possible. If your kids get to that level, push back on them. Because coaches can't do tournaments without the players. So just know that there's a lot of coaches that don't necessarily believe tournaments are bad yet.
So, when I started coaching many years ago, I knew this game of soccer really well, but I'd never been a soccer coach. And I wanted to win. I wanted to help my players to win. For me, it wasn't enough to coach them in practice. I had to coach them during the games, too. And the way I coached them during the games was to stand on the sidelines and yell, "Johnny, you got to move back farther in defense. You're too far forward. You're not farther enough to the right. Jimmy, you got to go to the goal. Go to the goal, Jimmy." And I was yelling. And what happened when I started yelling? My parents, they started yelling. "Yeah, Bobby, listen to the coach. Do this." Or sometimes it wasn't even listen to the coach. Parents know a lot of things too about soccer, right? Maybe not. So they started yelling. And before long, there's this cacophony of sound coming from the sidelines. But you know what I've learned over the years? I read this great book a couple years into coaching, and it basically said the best way to coach kids, especially younger kids, during games, is by zipping it. Because, and you heard some of this from Aaron before, part of playing this game is about a large part of playing this game is about the brain. And if they're going to learn how to play this game, first of all, they can't have somebody telling them all the time what to do, because they're never going to learn and make mistakes and get better. But also, if you have all this cacophony from the sidelines, it's hard to think out there. Do I listen to my coach? Do I listen to my parents? Do I listen to nobody? Do I listen to my teammates? It's craziness. And this quote here is from actually a Manchester United coach. Players need to be provided sustained periods of freedom, silence, and uninterrupted play. You think about, let's forget EYSA and Lake Hills Soccer and Bellevue United Soccer and everything. Let's forget these leagues ever existed. Kids would still play, right? They'd go out on the playground and they'd play. When they're playing by themselves, without a ref, without a coach, does that mean they can't play? Or can't play well? No, they play great. In fact, you could argue maybe they play even better because there's no parents yelling, there's nobody calling fouls, they're figuring it out on their own. That's what we're trying to achieve here. And in order to do that, we need sideline silence. We need the players to think for themselves. And there's this great analogy that also came from the book. And think about it if you're helping to have your kid learn to color. You sit there when they're younger and say, "Here's the red crayon! Here's the red crayon! Color between the lines!" No, you don't do that. They just give them a box of crayons and they color. And they learn and they become great artists. Or not, but they're figuring it out on their own, right? So, my challenge of you as parents, and particularly since this room isn't full of parents, when you see other parents on the sideline yelling and screaming, maybe kind of sidle up to them, buy them a cup of coffee, something, and say, "Hey, you know what? Shh, let the coach. And the really good coaches, the coaches will yell some occasionally, but a lot of them, they'll wait until the players get subbed off, and then they'll sit the you'll sit the player down on the bench and say, hey Jimmy, what'd you see out there? What'd you notice? What happened? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? And you'll let the kids sort of self-report back in terms of what they saw. And then the coach will listen. And then they'll say, well, I saw that too, but here's something I saw that maybe you didn't see that you could maybe try doing next time. So that's great coaching. That's great sort of rapport to give the player that coaching moment, but the coaching moment when you don't have to yell, and when the player's not trying to listen to the coach and play the ball at the same time. There was this survey that just happened this year in Sweden where 83% said the parents were pushing their children too much and they're criticizing everybody very loudly. And the parents got together on their own and they basically said, I'm going to sign a pledge that I'm not going to do that. Because we realize we're doing the wrong thing. And you know, not only are we doing the wrong thing for the kids, but we're doing the wrong thing for the refs too. We're causing refs to quit the game because we're too loud, too obnoxious. One of the best things I have learned, not as a coach, but as a parent, is this last thing, from a post-game perspective. Don't get your kid in the car afterwards and tell him, well, Johnny, here's my assessment of your game. The first half, you know, you weren't making the runs far enough down the right side of the field. You're dogging it, you're slow. We got to really improve your left-footed passing next time, etc. Kids don't want to hear from that from you. They barely want to hear it from their coach because they're out there to play and have fun with their friends. What they want to hear from you as a parent is, you know what? I just love watching you play. It was so fun. That's how I got enjoyment as a parent. If you do that, and if you're silent on the sidelines, thumbs up. That's what we want you to do as a parent. Tell other parents, spread the word. That'll help everything.
Specialization.
Okay, specialization versus multi-sport. So, how many people think that their kids should start playing soccer and only soccer when they're 2 years old because otherwise they're never going to get into the pros or get into a D1 college program? No hands went up. So that's rare. Usually, and I'm joking honestly, 2 years old is a bit young to be specializing in soccer, but there is this misconception that, boy, if I don't get my kid touching the ball 10,000 times, practicing every day, thinking, breathing, learning soccer at a really young age, bad things will happen. They won't have the opportunities. They won't be able to get that D1 college scholarship. Well, guess what? Even the good players, probably most of the good players aren't going to get that D1 college scholarship. We're not out here to get the kids the D1 college scholarship. If the kids want and need and earn that D1 college scholarship, they'll do it. But specialization is a bit of a misnomer. And if you look at these stats, which come from various places, kids who specialize in a single sport, 50% overuse injuries in young athletes. If they specialize, ironically and almost mystically, will have a higher rate of adult physical inactivity. And when you kind of think that through, that makes sense. They get burned out doing sports, and so when they become an adult, they stop doing sports. As opposed to because they don't enjoy it anymore. It becomes a task, not an enjoyment thing. If you specialize too early as a kid, there's a greater chance for burnout, decreased motivation, lack of enjoyment. I'm repeating myself now. And even, and especially for females, as Aaron was telling you earlier, there's a higher level of injury and ACL tears, etc. So the flip side of this is, what happens if you do specialize? Better skills, better ability, better smarts, better creativity. Because you're not just doing one thing, you're not just doing one repetitive set of actions in terms of dribbling the ball. One day you're dribbling, the next minute one day you're dribbling the soccer ball, the next day you're dribbling the basketball. Or you're catching a lacrosse ball in a net with your stick. So it's still this eye-hand coordination, but it's different movements, it's different skill sets. And it helps you think creative, it helps your brain, the way your brain thinks. And ultimately, believe it or not, it benefits your soccer career, if that's the sport you ultimately want to specialize in, versus inhibiting your soccer career. The last stat here, most college athletes come from multi-sports backgrounds. 88% participated in more than one sport as a child, and the great stat that I'm not going to get exactly right, but when Ohio State won the football national championship 4 or 5 years ago, something like 90% of their athletes hadn't started playing football as a full-time sport until really the latter part of their high school careers. They had been doing all kinds of other sports before they then put it all together and said, okay, I'm just going to be that football scholar, that football athlete. So what does that mean in terms of specialization versus multi-sport? Well, this myth of 10,000 hours, yes, it's important to obviously focus on these repetitive tasks, but these repetitive tasks don't have to just be in soccer. They can be in multiple sports because it's not about just doing the same thing, it's about getting those different eye-hand coordination experiences. And this is from one study, but it said prior to age 12, do a ton of sports, 80% of the time. Just play, just go out and play. Just go out and have fun. Yes, at some point, if you want to get serious, you got to start tightening things up. So, as an early teenager, begin to think you're picking your sport, but still do at least one other. And then, when you're 16 and above, okay, now you can start specializing. If you think you know what you want to specialize in, but still find some time to do different stuff. Don't specialize too early. And again, what I'm telling you here is there's no perfect formula. Hopefully, what I'm trying to impart is that there's just an opportunity to do lots of stuff. You're not going to hurt your kid. You're not going to hurt yourself because, after all, you're not the one getting the D1 scholarship. It's for your kid, if it's going to happen at all. Just let them go out and have fun. Let them try all kinds of different sports, and good things will happen.